Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. This past week was a busy news week coming out of Washington, D.C., and we had the chance to be there. We took a trip to D.C. to have a conversation with Secretary Brooke Rollins that will run in 2 weeks as kind of a reflection on her first year of service. And it worked out that Secretary Rollins was making an important announcement this week, so we got it from her.
Well, first of all, thank you and welcome to the USDA. Yes, this week was a big week. Our team had been frankly working since last spring, preparing for a potential bridge opportunity for our farmers. Originally, we thought it would be due to trade, but eventually we've realized that actually trade is not really affected much, but what has is high input costs left over and no new trade deals. So we announced $11 billion immediately for our row croppers. We've got another $1 billion set aside, more announcements coming on that for specialty crops and perhaps others. By December 19th, if those who have not yet turned their acreage into the FSA, their local FSA office, that is what this next round of payments investment will look like, and the money will be moving in February. So hopefully very, very easy, just like the ECAP program that a lot of our farmers utilized over this last year, and that money will move very quickly beginning in February.
All right, and so producers, once we hit that December 19th certification deadline, then they're free to log on to the website, fill out a form. Is that how we expect this to work?
That's right.
All right. And then that money will just be a very quick turnaround, as you mentioned, like the ECAP program.
That's correct. Yeah, I'm very grateful. Big shout out to the USDA family and the team that's been working on this to make it seamless, hopefully. But if we have any farmers with any issues, please let us know. We're really here for them.
For folks who do want to reach out to the USDA or if they've got questions, what is the best place for a farmer to get in touch with this agency?
We have a portal at USDA.gov where they can put, hopefully they've got their local FSA offices, but we know there have been some challenges, but we've got a portal on the website to let us know if there are any issues.
Fantastic. Secretary Rollins, thank you so much for taking the time to fill us in on this farmer bridge payment, and we look forward to having a deeper conversation with you here in about 2 weeks right on the program.
Great. Thank you.
Our thanks to Secretary Rollins for filling us in on the Farmer Bridge Assistance. Later in the program, we'll talk with Farm Progress Policy Editor Josh Baitke about the additional details we've received since then. Also, I had the chance to check in with Michael Fosdick, a Pioneer field agronomist in Iowa, about the yields he's seen for his customers this past growing season.
Yeah, this past fall, many customers that I work with were exceptionally excited about their yields. When you think about over the years, I would say most guys actually would say that this was maybe one of their better soybean years in a lot of cases, even despite some of the challenges early on in the season and challenges that Mother Nature throws at us every single year. So,
what were some of the biggest challenges your growers saw this year?
Well, this year we had an opportunity to get a lot of soybeans in the ground earlier than normal, which was excellent when we look at the yield that usually follows with the opportunity to plant soybeans early. So with those challenges, you generally do end up having some cooler soil temperatures. Sometimes you have some moisture challenges. And the one thing we did see was we saw some emergence challenges early on with some of the heavy crusting soils on some of the heavier soils there, especially, every year we get a planting window that might be a little bit more challenging. And obviously coming off a year like 2024, where we had exceptional corn yields, you have a lot of residue to contend with. So those are all just challenges that, as an agronomist, I get the opportunity to work with customers to try to navigate through how do we, continue to make those improvements as years go forward. But outside of that was probably one of the bigger challenges. So had a pretty good growing season overall to add on to that.
That's always good to hear farmers overcoming these challenges. And as you mentioned, we continue to innovate in agriculture. Pioneer, of course, had the Z-Series beans out there in the field this year. And from an agronomist perspective, what makes the Z-Series so much better than the prior 6 series of soybeans from Pioneer?
Yeah, well, I think one thing you could say about Pioneer as we innovate and work through our research is we never settle. So, we're on our 6th series of soybeans, and with each series, we've naturally not only picked up yield, but we're obviously always trying to put the hammer down on agronomics, disease tolerance, standability, and all those different agronomic factors too. So we're really excited about the Z series. It's also very exciting when you're meeting with a customer and they bring up Z series because they've seen either the power that particular series has already had on their farm, or they've heard about it from a neighbor.
What's one thing you tell farmers who maybe haven't yet tried Pioneer soybeans? Why should they give them a shot in 2026?
Yeah, once again, when you think about, not only yield component, but all the other agronomics that come along with soybeans, there's just a plethora of reasons why a customer should be looking at our Pioneer Z Series soybeans, and seeing what they can do on their farm, from a plethora of different maturity options, as well as, different characteristics that fit their farm. Everybody should be looking at them if they aren't already. So.
That makes sense, Michael. Real quick, before we let you go, Pioneer celebrates 100 years in business in 2026. What does that mean to you as an agronomist?
Yeah, 100 years of Pioneers is humbling to be a part of, I guess, to say the least, as an agronomist with Pioneer. And just to think back through all the different milestones that we've reached across that 100 years, not only talking about each series of soybeans, but just, the ability to research and select and breed for these soybeans along the years, and to see where we're at today is very exciting. Excited to see what the next 100 years has in store.
Excited for that next 100 years. Michael Fosdick, Pioneer Field Agronomist with Pioneer. Thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you, Mike.
You can get more information online at pioneer.com, and leave it here. We'll have our market segment with Dan Huber of the Huber Report when This Week in Agribusiness returns. Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up with these volatile commodity markets at farmfutures.com. Joining us now to break down these volatile markets is Dan Huber of the Huber Report. Dan, thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me.
So we've still got a lot of uncertainty about government data. We did get an update this week from the World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates Crop Production Report.
Correct.
Traders had a huge range of guesses as to what was going to come out on those reports. Dan, how did they end up hitting this market? On the corn side, what did we see?
Well, of course, realistically, when you have a big range of guesses, it's more difficult to find a surprise in there. But regardless, I mean, the numbers came in very close to what estimates were. On the corn side especially, yes, we're still over $2 billion on the estimate. They did push some usage up a little bit, didn't do anything different with production. We'll see. I mean, $2 billion is kind of that psychological number. If we're over $2 billion, negative, under $2 billion, not as negative, I guess you'd say. But I would point out, when you look at the world supply and demand report, ending stocks were lowered again. And not that we're going to run out of corn by any stretch of the imagination. As a raw stocks number and as a stocks to usage ratio, this is the lowest we've had ending inventory in over a decade.
Oh, wow.
So it's, granted, we don't have any trouble spots out there. You would need a trouble spot to really make prices move higher. But, when you continue to ratchet down ending stocks, theoretically that's supportive on prices. Again, maybe not a rally stimulus, but we'll at least put some support underneath. Soybeans, hard to make that argument. 290 million here domestically, ample supply. South America looks like it's going to put out another sizable crop. Not as as big an increase as we've seen in years past, but certainly no issue as far as where the global supplies are on soybeans. So,
speaking of South America, how does planting progress look across Brazil, and have they made any progress yet in Argentina?
Oh yeah. Brazil, I think about 90% planted on the soybean crop. There's a few weather spots, as you would expect in a country that large. I don't recall right now what the Argentine progress, but I think it's about average. And here again too, like I say, nothing alarming enough right now to say we need to worry about any demand shifting back to the U.S. And yeah, it's great. Yeah, we've seen some demand return with the Chinese in there now. But I mean, you can use all the metaphors you want. The window's closed. The ship has sailed. However you want to splice it. We're just not going to pick up the kind of share we should have had of that Chinese market
As we look out to 2026, Dan, you mentioned the ship has sailed. We did see another announcement that, speaking of Argentina, those folks cutting some of their export taxes, moving bean meal into China. It seems as if other folks are now sort of gunning for that hole in the Chinese market. Oh,
absolutely. I mean, they are the market out there, or the dominant market out there. I mean, not that there aren't others that fill in the slots here and there, but boy, I mean, that's the prize. And Argentina, of course, they have their own struggles, but good crops overall. Last year looks like they've got off to a pretty good start with planting here on this year's crops and development. So yes, they know one of the key elements to turn their economy around is to get that export business going again. So they're doing all they can to make that happen.
Let's turn our focus over to the wheat market. Dan, it has been unattractive from a seller's perspective here for the past several months. Are we finally starting to find some concrete bottoms?
I think supportive is just the best word. We've stemmed the decline. Not that we've been able to rise a whole lot. It's still pretty much a stagnant market. But I think as far as downside risk, probably very limited downside risk at this point in time. But here again, we're lacking any kind of stimulus to really make us move in the other direction.
Let's talk about that stimulus. So many times in the world of commodities, we see that stimulus provided by a story followed by institutional money chasing that story. We've got the equities still running hot, metals running hot. Is there a lot of speculative money looking at agricultural commodities?
If they're only looking at it for a value perspective, certainly, or maybe concerned that we're overheated, a little bit frothy in the equity market or the metals market, sure. But here again, most of the people that, equity market's a good example. A lot of money just flows into there week after week with payrolls. So that is a constant buying factor in there if you're not panicking it on because of the overvaluation of AI stocks or something of that nature. The metals, gold, of course, especially, and to a lesser extent, Bitcoin, or cryptos in general, which have really cooled off a lot, that is still there as kind of that safe haven hedge. Uncertainty about what this global economy is going to do. A lot of signs pointing to some troubles headed down the road here, particularly as we've come to some agreements with some of the tariff deals, but we have really disrupted the trade inventories, you name it. So it's that gold continues to be an attractive alternative for people who don't want to have everything put into the dollar. Dollar, another great example. Right now, been on the defensive, hasn't collapsed by any stretch of the imagination, but significantly down from where we were a year ago. Is that good for our export business? Theoretically, but here again, it's also not necessarily good for where we sit in the world position in world trade.
Right,
so.
But maybe it will help sell us more corn on the international markets.
Absolutely.
Those exports still look strong.
Keep us a little more competitive, right?
Yes,
right.
That's what it's all about. Dan Hewer, there's a whole lot to watch in this next year. Thank you so much for joining us here to share your insights.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, Greg Solier has been keeping an eye on all of this extreme weather. And Greg, I've had friends in Washington State having to evacuate their herds due to this flooding. Is that going to continue next week?
Continues on this atmospheric river. It's gotten to a point, we have those Hurricane Air Force planes, hurricane hunters that go out in the Atlantic and the Pacific to track hurricanes. That's how, problematic this setup is across the open waters of the Pacific. They're going to go out there, drop what we call radio signs and get atmospheric information and data to hopefully improve modeling of what's going on out there because it has reached critical mass. Some 17 area streams and rivers into Washington State are at or better than flood stage right now. And it's these high snow levels where it's mainly rain coming on down, and that certainly creates debris and flash flooding. Just getting ramped up into it, unfortunately. The cold air relaxing after readings that were down double-digit below zero over the past weekend. So some moderation in there, but little change. Another system coming ashore, high snow levels, the cold air kind of relaxing somewhat across sections of the Central Plains, but another bitter biting shot across the areas of the Dakotas and far upper Midwest where their snows continue on, and get used to it here as we head deeper on into the wintertime season. Meanwhile, on the southern end of that jet stream pattern, the Pacific Northwest, trademark of La Nina, high and dry weather, valleys of California, warmth in the desert Southwest, and even some moderation from the cold across the central and south end of winter wheat. Still some work to do with dryness and drought down there. Nothing in the forecast. Milder environs back in the valleys of California. Weak system and a shot of some colder air and some mixed rain and snow in some spots across Nebraska. But sunshine and warmth, the story over some of those winter wheat fields that were exposed to some of that bitter cold a few days ago from Kansas on southward.
Across the central part of the country, are they going to see a little relaxation in the activity from the sky?
Well, it's still a busy weather pattern. The cold air moderates. I wouldn't necessarily call it warmer. Footing still continues to be precarious for man and beast, whether it's melting snow, ice, muddy fields, thaw-free cycles, a whole 9 yards, with a windy moderation event underway on temperatures over the western and northern corn belts, some mixed rain and snow, another push of colder, not brutal air, but colder air back as you venture into the northern and central plains. That system still strung out here weather with cold air through the upper Midwest, milder air across the plains, disturbances on the jet stream pattern, no shortage of generating additional rounds of rain and snow across a wide area of the northern and central plains and Corn Belt locales as we head through the late portion of the week. Get out and enjoy the weather, I guess. Outdoor work is pretty decent, and the same with livestock operations. If you were sheltered from the cold a few days ago on the central and southern plains, the return flow brings some moisture back into the southeastern plains, warmth across the desert southwest, little if any active winter storms on the southern plains, continues fairly quiet, uneventful, a bit of rain in through the Delta region, warmth into areas of the Rio Grande and points westward across the desert southwest, almost a early summer feel expected out there.
Do you expect this active pattern to persist all the way through the Northeast?
Continues on with this wide disparity of temperatures, as I mentioned, almost early summer-like in the southwestern reaches of the country. Still looking at these lobes over the building snowpack of readings that bottom out at night at 20 to 30 below zero through the Canadian prairie. And so we get some moderation in the cold, but we set up a wide complexity of moisture in one form or another in the eastern Corn Belt locales. The cold air for now entrenched across the northeast and New England. Push of colder air across the western Corn Belt. That system moves on through with its rain and snow. Significant moisture for the northeast and New England. On its heels, a new feature coming out of the central plains along the periphery of that advancing cold. So frequent weather systems, and sometimes a third or fourth in a row turns out to be a major winter storm. We'll see that transpire as we get deeper on into the month of January. Frost and freeze, that was a story across the central and southern plains early in the week across the Tennessee Valley and southeastern states all the way down into the Florida Panhandle. Some leftover shower activity here. New weather system as the return flow sets up across the southeastern plains. A chilly rain event there, maybe perhaps a few wet snowflakes as you get into parts of Oklahoma. So it's much colder, but as the week wears on, nice turnaround temperature readings across the southern plains anticipated. A couple of showers there. Little rain snow mix across sections of the Ohio Valley. Cool, dry weather for the mid-Atlantic region down through Florida and Georgia. And it has been a dry fall season. Georgia coming off the fourth driest meteorological autumn season, sixth driest across Florida. So another tip-off and trip-off of La Nina. Sometimes it is a continuation of drier than usual weather pattern in this particular part of the country going forward. We'll have a look at that long-range forecast, a 4-week forecast, and it'll take you into the new year, the month of January, coming up a little bit later on in the broadcast.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. All farmers know that every growing season is unique. While I was at the National Association of Farm Broadcasting annual convention, I had the chance to talk with Ron Geis from Corteva. He works with their crop protection chemistries across the United States, and I had the chance to ask him what challenges he saw for his growers during this past growing season.
Well, when we start off the season, we sort of had a have and have-nots as we divided east and west. When you go to the west, we couldn't buy a raid to save our life, Mike. But in the east, they couldn't get it to shut off, right? So when I'm in the weed control business, that has a lot of implications. We couldn't get the residual herbicides activated in the west, and we couldn't get them applied in the east. Then we progressed the season, and of course, weed control was a bit of a challenge through the season. And then as we got later in the season, up comes southern rust, and people that traded for rust really got rewarded this year.
From a weed control perspective, what were some of the headline weeds that your growers really were struggling with?
Water hemp, and water hemp.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to the northern plains, that's public enemy number one. To the east a little bit, we start running into giant ragweed, and to the west we run into more kochia. But water hemp is pervasive. And then, of course, as you go in the south, Palmer amaranth, which hasn't really made its way all the way into the north yet. When we talk about Iowa, Minnesota, and some of those areas, we've held it off. But the management techniques that we're using to control weeds in the crops for water hemp is also controlling Palmer amaranth as well.
Okay, so we're learning how to manage, and we're having a bigger impact. Let's talk about what we can learn from this season as we're preparing for this next one. What are you watching for in the soybean crop for 26?
Well, I'm going to say prevention is better than the cure. Just like we vaccinate our cattle so they don't get sick, if we can prevent weeds from getting started, then we're 90% of the way there to taking care of them. So we are continuing to promote a solid foundation, Mike, that starts with a good pre-emerge program that keeps weeds at bay. And then use your post-emerge application to clean up the escapes from the pre's, because nothing's perfect as a pre-emerge. 95%, 98% is really, really good. There'll be a few escapes, but we need to time those post-emerge applications before those escaped weeds get out of control. So you've often heard weeds like water hemp will grow an inch a day, and we have to control them before they're 3 inches tall. Now, don't be scared into thinking you've got what does that give you, about a 2-day window. That's not really true. The inch a day starts when they hit about 3 inches. That's why we want to control them at 3 inches before they start that rapid growth. But to get a weed from 1 inch to 3 inch, you have about a 10-day window. So time it for that 1 to 3 inch weed so you can stay ahead.
From getting that field clean to start the season, what are some of the products that really stood out this year?
We reintroduced the Kyber product as Kyber Pro, which was an improved formulation, improved handling of the Kyber. That in soybeans has been a rock star. 3 modes of action. So Mike, each one of these 3, independent of each other, each one of those 3 would control water hemp. So we put the 3 of them together, we've got a low solubility water hemp product, a medium solubility, and a high solubility water hemp product built into one formulation, which makes it an ideal foundation for starting the season, especially when you're attacking water hemp. We also introduced Sonic Boom. It's a 2 mode of action, each of the 2 ingredients very, very solid on water hemp. What makes Sonic Boom interesting, one of them, the metribuzin, is a highly soluble product, but the way we formulated this product, we've actually turned it into a low solubility product. I've been doing this, Mike, I've been doing this for 40 years. In fact, 40 years ago, metribuzin was one of my products. We sold it as Lexone, it competed with Sencor back in the day. But crop injury was always a concern. Why the crop injury? Because of the high solubility. It would move where the root system of the soybean is and create problems. Well, Sonic Boom, with the formulation, it takes on the characteristics of the other ingredient, the sulfentrazone, the low solubility, the ingredient that's part of Sonic. That's why we kept the name Sonic Boom. One of them is part of the same family. But being low solubility, we saw instances where we had some heavier rains, which would normally cause injury, not cause injury with Sonic Boom, but right next to it, that same rate of metribuzin did cause injury to the soybeans. So we think this is going to be a revolutionary product moving forward, keeping it as a co-crystal.
That's fantastic. Now, you mentioned that gets the field clean, that gets us off to a good start, but we're always going to have those escapes. What do you like for post-emergence control with that flexibility?
I'm going to say the first thing I like is be timely.
Okay.
Be timely. We can control a 1 or 2 inch water hemp so well, so easily, but too many farmers let that go. Now they're after these big trophies, 8, 12, 15 inch weeds. So when you're timely, we want to use a combination, of course, on Enlist beans, of Enlist and glufosinate. Both of them very effective on water hemp, independent of each other. You put the 2 together, it's excellent resistance management. You keep on top of the weeds. Once you've gone beyond the window and you let weeds get out of control, we all have these best management practices. You better be following every single one, because you got 2 strikes against you before you get to the plate. That means using plenty of oil, methylated oil. That means keeping your pressure high, your gallons high, the right adjuvants. Even watching the weather, the more humid times of day, will improve your performance.
Okay.
But again, prevention is better than the cure. If we start with a solid foundation, we've just got cleaner fields and a whole lot less to worry about post-emerge if we would start with a good foundation.
Our thanks to Ron Geis of Corteva. Folks, keep it tuned to This Week in Agribusiness over the next couple of weeks. Next week, we'll have our annual Christmas program for you. Looking forward to shooting that. And then the week following, we'll go to Washington, D.C. to have a conversation with Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins and Undersecretary of Agriculture Richard Fordyce. We also got the scoop on a new program recently announced from the USDA, so stay tuned in.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Pioneer. Plant with confidence. Plant the #1 corn and soybean seed of the U.S. Pioneer.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Over this past season, viewers have gotten to know several of our farmers from our Plant Smart, Grow Smart series with BASF. Max Armstrong recently brought all 3 together for a reflection on this year's growing season.
Stewardship, finally stewardship. We're really under the magnifying glass in the agriculture industry in a number of ways. People watch what we do, but it's more than that. It's a sense of doing the right thing, isn't it, David?
Yep.
Talk about that, how you view it.
I want it to be as good as it was when I received it, or better. Anything you do to the land, or no matter what it is, just make it that much better for the next guy.
There is a lot of pride in that too, isn't there? I watched what my father did working, with the local conservation folks on our farm, and when there was a structure put in, he would point it out with pride, say, come down here with me and see what we've done here. There is pride in that, isn't there?
It's your livelihood. So you have to take care of it or you're not going to be there very long. It's to give it to the next generation, and things have evolved and changed. I worked for the NRCS for a while, and what we did then and the practices has just evolved so differently.
How so?
The no-till practice has really changed a lot with things. I grew up in a lot of hills, and I don't know how many terraces I laid out. I laid out so many terraces it wasn't even funny. And I can go back there and I will tell you half of them or more are gone.
In farming these days, we're all under the microscope, from the public, right? That's the number one thing. You see, everybody wants to know where their food comes from. They think that we're doing everything, to poison America and some of those things that you see out there. And we're, if they only would know that it's the exact opposite. We are doing everything we can to pass on to the next generation, raise the most sustainable food, for myself, my kids, my parents, everybody that goes to the grocery store and buys that same food that we're providing for everyone else.
Finally, to wrap that up, BASF has a role working with you in this stewardship goal, do they not?
I think that's where BASF is constantly researching, no matter what crop it is, if it's a vegetable crop or a fruit crop or a sugar beet crop, they're trying to make that next product so it works the first time, and that's the only time you need to be out in that field.
Talk about your experiences in the past with BASF, your representative, and what you kind of expect for the future.
I guess he's a very hands-on individual who, he doesn't always show up when you even call for a problem. He might just show up on his own, just ask how things are going, actually takes the time to, what issues do you see coming? They hold a symposium every winter where you can get in with a bunch of other farmers. You can talk about your issues and bring things up.
David, yourself, I've heard some producers talk about the fact their BASF representative is kind of their early warning system for them. That if there's a vibe of something coming into the region, they share it with you.
Mine is he'll call or send you a text at 6 o'clock in the morning. Says, I know you're busy, but here's what I think's coming. And if I can help you any at all, drop me a pin and I'll go to that field and check it out. So he has to come 100 miles.
Seriously?
Yes. We'll drop 2 or 3 pins on some cornfield or bean field or something that we haven't seen, and he'll go walk it and call and says, this thing's clean, or you need to get over here and spray for this, and here's what you probably ought to use. Just very hands-on.
Well, here's to a better season ahead. 2026, maybe the best ever, hopefully, for the three of you guys and your neighbors and your friends, to a great year ahead. Thank you for spending a little time with us and imparting your knowledge to us.
Yeah, thank you, Max. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Max, and all the farmers from our Plan Smart, Grow Smart series. If you'd like to see the full video collection, find it online at plansmartgrowsmart.com.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier returns now with his extended farm weather forecast for the country.
Well, Greg said next week's going to be active. Greg, who's going to see the precipitation?
In one form or another, sloppy, muddy feedlots for some, snow melt and others, and we continue to just add to the snowpack and snow cover. Should be a white Christmas over a wide area of the country, and yeah, you think we're into wintertime? Not quite, not till the 21st, a little after 9 in the central time zone. As the week wears on, this will be a late week setup across the plains into the upper Midwest. Note the freezing rain and ice potential here later in the week and into the weekend. Good coverage moisture moves it back in the southeastern part of the country. And look at the conservative number here, but it is representative of at least another couple of feet of snow, higher peaks, and another couple of inches at least or more of rainfall in the Pacific Northwest and into Washington State in particular. So the pattern continues on there unabated, the atmospheric river.
What do you see temperature-wise as we get to the week of the 22nd through the 28th?
And the cold air firmly ensconced here. Meanwhile, some warmth over the western part of the country across Dixie. So we do get some recovery on temperatures, not long lasting, and it's still a fairly busy weather pattern focused in the Pacific Northwest again, drying out central and southern plains, southwestern part of the country. That's a trip off of La Nina, and the snow pattern continues through the upper Midwest, eastern Corn Belt, into the northeast of New England. Normalized moisture over the southeast, including Florida.
All right. Well, what do you see as we turn the calendar over to the new year, Greg?
Not much of a, well, there is kind of a new weather pattern, I should say. Here it is right here, and get used to it. This is a pretty good snapshot of how the winter season plays out with these lobes of Arctic air spinning over the northern third and quarter of the country, some warmth over the deep south, and it is a busy weather pattern. Still Pacific Northwest headlines to be made there, unfortunately. Northern and central plains with a freezing rain and ice event for the Ohio Valley, and plenty of snow expected from the border trade through the Canadian Prairie and points to the north from there.
How about the week of January 5th?
Not much of a change whatsoever. The cold air ensconced right here. And look at the storm track as well, favored over the southern plains into the northeast of New England, and severe weather too down along the Gulf Coast.
Our Farm Progress Update is brought to you by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of versatile high-speed discs and achieve better results with every pass. Visit brandt.ca for more. At the top of this episode, we heard from Secretary Brooke Rollins about the new Farmer Bridge Assistance Payment Program. We're joined now by Josh Bethke. He's Farm Progress's policy editor, and he's been keeping an eye on this news that has come out from Washington, D.C. Josh, thanks for joining us this week.
Hey, always good to be here, Mike.
So we heard from Secretary Rollins, I think the headline numbers, $12 billion, 11 going to commodities, 1 going to specialty crops. What else do we know about this payment, Josh? When could this money start to make it out to the people?
Well, from what we're being told, the money should make it out by the end of February. We're still waiting to find out, as far as the assistance for row crop farmers, exactly what amounts people are going to get. There's a deadline for December 19th where they're going to base these payments on the acreage reports as of that day. From what I understand, it's going to be a straightforward payment. It's going to be based on, a calculation involving acreage and estimated losses, but how that's going to be doled out by commodity remains to be seen. And as for the specialty crop program, the other $1 billion, we don't know a whole lot about that yet. We're just waiting to get more details. And at this point, there's really nothing else known about that last $1 billion.
That $1 billion, those specialty crop producers, I've had the chance to talk with some specialty crop producers this year, and they have suffered similarly to the commodity producers. Have we heard anything from that industry on this bridge assistance? Do specialty crop producers say it's enough?
I think there was disappointment that there was not more clarity on exactly what's coming. Now, Secretary Rollins and USDA says they need to get more input from stakeholders to better understand exactly, what assistance is needed. But I think there was some disappointment just not only in the number, but that there's not even a plan for when they can get money yet. So we'll see when we get more details. Maybe it'll be satisfactory to them, but that's really unknown right now.
All right, Josh. So December 19th, that's the big date. If we don't have acres certified, got to get in by the FSA by that date to at least be considered, as we understand it today, for this payment.
Correct. Yeah, and like I said, that's the data they're going to use to calculate these payments. So if farmers don't have their acreage updated correctly, they may be out of luck on getting the payments that they're entitled to.
Now, Josh, it has been 2 or 3 months we've been talking about the potential of this program. Now we've got confirmation that it's coming into being. But from your perspective, as you'll continue to update these things, where can folks go to keep up with these announcements as they do drip, drip, drip out from this administration?
Yeah, come to farmprogress.com. We're going to be covering this extensively, and as we get updates and hear more about the program, we'll definitely share it with our readers, and come check it out.
Absolutely, folks. You can find that farmprogress.com. Look for bylines by our own Josh Bethke, policy editor on the team. Josh, as always, thanks for joining and sharing your insight onto these complicated political topics.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. Always good to be here.
Now on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. In Max's Tractor Shed this weekend, I posed the question to you John Deere two-cylinder experts, and I know there are a bunch of you out there. I've heard from you experts over the years. Were there other colors that they would paint John Deere tractors? Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Lundell Plastics, located in Odebolt, Iowa, turning out those quality polyplastic products. LundellPlastics.com. Producers, you can get one of their catalogs. You can get one of Vance Lundell's catalogs. There's a whole section on planting products that you can order from them. LundellPlastics.com. bigairon.com. Well, I had heard that maybe there were other colored John Deere tractors, not just green ones, that if you had a highway department, for example, you were coming in to buy a bunch of tractors for a county highway department, maybe a state highway commission, you would tell them what color you wanted. They'd paint those tractors that color. Well, I'm not sure about that. Somebody will set me straight. You can email me, themaxarmstrong@gmail.com. But now here's one that's not John Deere green. This belongs to Drew Gordon at Kinston, North Carolina. This is an M Industrial made in 1951. And Drew picked it up in Orangeville, Illinois. But look at the color of it. Yes, examine that color. It apparently was painted that way for a highway department. And we heard that you could go in and ask for whatever color you wanted, chartreuse, orange, whatever. Well, Drew Gordon is a real conversation starter. He likes to have tractors that are a little bit out of the ordinary, as people will come up and say, hey, shouldn't that be green? It's an M Industrial, made by John Deere in 1951, whatever color it was, owned by Drew Gordon. Here's Mark Stocknow with a weekly Big Iron Report.
Well, Max, we've got more auctions taking place on bigairon.com. Monday, December the 15th, the Van Wall Equipment Sale by Boone, Iowa, featuring late model low-hour John Deere machinery. Rome Brothers Farm Retirement Sale will be on Monday, December the 15th. Their equipment by Gibson City, Illinois. On Wednesday, December the 17th, the Howen Farms Inc. Retirement Sale will be by Thompson, Iowa. Blue Stem Farms, Chestertown, Maryland, December 17th. Then we move to Thursday, December the 18th with the Michael Breebe Retirement Sale, Milan, Illinois. Kent and Teresa Baker Retirement Sale, Winfield, Iowa. The Premium Equipment Auction, Bird Island, Minnesota, December the 18th, featuring late model John Deere farm machinery. Friday, December 19th, Dennis and Janice Brinkman, their retirement sale, Green, Iowa. The M&T White Farms GP sale by Wagner, Oklahoma is December 19th. December 29th, the Stephen Moore Retirement Sale, Roscoe, Texas. And the Young Farms Inc. Retirement Sale will kick us off January the 6th of 2026. Not to mention, Max, several farms will sell in December, plus our special livestock sales. Check all the action out on bigairon.com. Happy holidays to everyone.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Gehringoff. Check out the new XFR 50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than the closest competitor at Gehringoff.com. Gehringoff, proudly built in the American heartland. Well, this week we're getting to know Jessica Peters. She's serving as the Michigan State FFA reporter for this year. Jessica, thanks for talking with us.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
So I understand you had some experience with sheep and goats while you were coming up. Did you grow up on a farm?
So no, I actually did not grow up on a farm. I grew up around agriculture, being from a small town, but wasn't personally involved in it until I started FFA. And through that, I started showing pigs and started showing goats just recently.
What was it that made you want to be a part of that FFA chapter?
Yeah, so I actually started showing dogs through 4-H and wanted to kind of diversify and start showing livestock. And I, through a connection, got involved with Lapeer County FFA to start showing livestock, but from there it developed into so much more.
Things always develop once they get started, of course, and now you're serving as a state officer. And what are you excited for as you look ahead to the rest of this school year?
Man, I am just so excited to start connecting with members. We've been doing a lot of chapter visits as a team and just connecting with those members and making those genuine impacts. We have our state convention coming up in March, so super, super excited for that.
And of course, you're in college now. Hopefully, do you plan to make a career in agriculture?
Yeah, so right now I'm at Michigan State University studying ag food and natural resources education to hopefully be an ag teacher. So continuing that impact.
Fantastic, Jessica. We always need more good folks bringing that next generation into our industry. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you so much.
For a long time, it seemed as though you only saw electric vehicles when you were inside of a major metropolitan area. But that technology has continued to improve, and given that it's technology, Chad Colby is interested. He joins us now with an update.
Thanks, Mike. My wife and I recently demoed a new Tesla, and I wanted to show you how easy that is. On the website, down at the bottom, you click on Schedule a Demo. You can pick out which model you want to demo. We wanted to demo the Model Y, which is like a small SUV type vehicle. Then you just scroll down here to Location. We went to one of the self-serve ones, and I can tell you the experience is amazing. Select on the date you want to demo the car and what time, and then you put in your driver's details of who's driving the car. You got to do a few things after you download the app. It's going to ask you for a driver's license and things like that. And once you show up at your appointment time, as you can see here, this is a automobile repair facility here in Peoria, and the two Teslas are sitting right there. And once you back in and park your vehicle, once you get out, it actually knows you're walking up to the car. The one we're going to drive is the one on the right. That is the Model Y. The smaller car is the Model 3 on the left. And then again, once you walk up to it, the app really kind of takes over. It Bluetooths to the car so it can put the key on the phone, and that's what opens the car. And you'll see here it unlocks the car door and I get in the vehicle. Now, once you're inside, you can get on the screen here and you can check out the mirrors and driver settings. And if it's your first drive in a Tesla, you might want to spend a little time familiarizing that before you go drive the vehicle. But I can tell you this, these cars are amazing. They've been around for a long time. The Y is the #1 selling car in the world for a reason. And listen, before we wrap up this segment, I've got to tell you, in our next tech segment coming up, we're going to talk about Tesla's supervised full self-driving mode. As you can see here, as I'm on Interstate 74 in traffic crossing the Illinois River Bridge. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. That is pretty cool technology. And folks, stick around. We'll be talking with our friends from Case IH about their usage of self-driving technology when we come back. Farming is hard, but equipment companies want to make it easier. Max Armstrong recently had the chance to talk with Case product specialist David Giroux about their usage of new technology.
We really want to focus on making the operator in the seat as productive as possible, right? So we have things such as AccuGuide, obviously, we've had that for a while, right? Driving straight through the field. But how do we take that to the next level? So we have what's called AccuTurn and AccuTurn Pro. So think about your headland turns, right? If you're a good farmer, you can hit that turn and make your guest rows look perfect all the time, right? Sometimes you mess it up. You might have a wide guest row, a narrow one, and then you get to look at it all summer, right? No one likes to look at that. So we have AccuTurn Pro, which basically takes the turning out of the situation, right? So you come up to the headlands, the tractor knows where it's at in the field, and then it'll go ahead and execute a hands-free end-of-row turn. It also knows when to pick your implement up, turn around, put it back down in the ground, and away you go. Every row lines up perfectly, and your fields look beautiful all year round.
In tillage operations, too, you're working more and more, are you not, to try to improve that every pass of the field?
Yeah, so we just launched Soil Command on some new products of ours. So we got a 475 high-speed disc and a 435 VT Flex, so that's an adjustable gang angle disc that we got. So with Soil Command on them, we're able to kind of automate the tillage system, right? So we're able to put presets in there for different soil conditions where the operator can just go ahead, at a touch of a button, the whole machine changes its settings. We don't have to get out of the cab, move a bunch of stops, crank the stops, things like that. It's just one touch of the button.
What else are you focusing on as you visit with folks here at our Farm Broadcasters meeting?
Yeah, so something else with Soil Command is going to be our seed bed sense speed control, and this is a pretty cool system. So this is available on our 255 TigerMate field cultivator, and basically what it's doing is the field cultivator is telling the tractor how good of a job it's doing, okay? And based upon that, it'll tell the tractor to speed up or slow down based upon what the output is. We're the only one in the industry that actually knows how good of a job that tillage piece is doing and then telling the tractor to speed up and slow down. It's really slick.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, yep.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from farmers who have used it?
The guys who have used it love it. So you basically go out, you set a speed parameter. So let's say you're working around in the spring 5 miles to 8 miles an hour. Basically then, based on field conditions, that tractor automatically speeds up and slows down. And really what it does is it takes the operator presence out of it, right? They can just hit the button, turn around, be on auto guidance, and really focus on what that tool is doing. And it's completely automated. So you can kind of put any type of operator in that and get a high quality seed bed out of it.
Any kind of operator. And that is an important point, where labor is a challenge in many of our operations now.
Yep, for sure, for sure. One thing I talk to guys all the time is the shortage of labor, and you might have grandpa in the tractor, you might have the 16-year-old in the tractor, right? So how do you get those guys trained to be a great operator? That's what Case IH is focused on, is providing tools to make anyone a good operator.
And a good operator already sitting in the cab, someone who knows what they're doing, can maybe devote some attention to other things while they're up there, marketing, crops, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Less time spent looking out the back window, maybe more time managing the operation.
Thank you, David and Max, for that update. This equipment does just keep getting better. And thank you for joining us here today. Be sure to catch us next time, right here for This Week in Agribusiness. It's our Christmas special next week. This Week in Agribusiness is recorded in the Strauss Studio. Family owned since 1948 and trusted by pros worldwide, Strauss makes gear that works as hard as you do. Tough, functional, and resilient. This isn't just workwear, it's gear engineered to perform. Gear up now at Strauss.com.
This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.